Va a dar su nombre y a lo que se dedica Eva Kolarova, su país de origen.
Hello, my name is Eva Kolarova. I come from Czech Republic, but I moved out of Czech when I was 14 and then lived in a few other countries, and I moved in 2000 to Canada, so I'm also a Canadian. I am a dancer originally and a choreographer. And my other passions, what I do also is work with body and movement in a more holistic way.
Soy de la República Checa, de donde salí a los 14 años y me fui a Canadá en el 2000 y por eso desde esa época también soy canadiense. Hago danza originalmente y coreografía, pero mi otra pasión es movimiento corporal terapéutico. ¿Puedes recordar fue tu primer acercamiento a la danza de niña?
So when I was a child, I was fascinated by tutus, ballerina dresses. So I remember my first time, I think I was 7, I was sitting in the big Czech opera. We have this big, very old opera house which has a lot of history, and my mom brought me to see a Swan Lake, and I was so blown away with all the costumes and the girls on the point shoes and beautiful white dresses, and I said to my mom, I want to wear that tutu. So they brought me to a ballet school, so my first approach was a very classical and traditional way of seeing dance. In Czech, the school was quite like a Vaganova style, so it was very strict, very slow, and I think that's a little bit what I didn't really like, because my body I wasn't so open in my hips and I didn't have this perfect ballerina legs. And when I was 14, I had the opportunity to go to Lausanne to study with Maurice Béjart, which was like more neoclassical. And that's when first time in my life I discovered Martha Graham and Indian dance and kendo, like a Japanese martial art, commedia dell'arte, and so many other styles. So I kind of, until then, was very traditionally classical ballet, and then I discovered that this is my playground, and I started testing different styles of movement.
Lo primero que yo vi como a los 7 años fue, bueno, estaba fascinada con los tutús y le dije a mi mamá, yo quiero usar un tutú. Entonces me llevaron a ver Lago de los Cisnes y yo estuve absoluta y totalmente fascinada. Esto en la gran casa de la ópera checa. Y después me metieron a una escuela de ballet donde por algunos años hice Vaganova, que es lo que se daba allí, es decir, ruso, clásico, tradicional, lento, y esto no me acabó de gustar porque no me sentía con el cuerpo apropiado para esa técnica. Entonces me fui a los 14 años a la escuela de Béjart, y es donde, que era más neoclásica, y es donde conocí un montón de otras formas de danza, como puede ser la de la India, Martha Graham y varios más, tanto como también artes marciales. ¿Qué aprendiste con Béjart en la época en que trabajaste con él?
I was very fascinated by this approach of seeing a performance as a theater piece. So he was very much of a director, more like I would say like a movie director than a choreographer. So for him it was more important the concept of the story, everything else. The movement was kind of a secondary. And he also was, I think for him was very important to convey like a deeper emotions, and it was fascinating. So I was still lucky to see him alive, because he passed away, I think, 5 years when I left the school. So I actually worked with him. He was in a wheelchair at that time, and I think he was somebody who was like somebody who opened like a new door in the dance world, because at that time I think ballet was very much very strict, and he really broke that and started bringing an Indian dance into the performance, and crazy costumes, and he made a ballet to like music of Queens, and so I think for me that was very enriching to see a man of such a knowledge. Yeah.
Lo que me llamó la atención fue la manera en que veía todo el escenario como un todo, más como un director de cine que como un coreógrafo de movimiento. Y lo que me abrió el panorama fue su manera en que introducía otras cosas, otras músicas, vestuarios muy locos, metía cosas de danza de la India, en fin, mezcló y pues me abrió un panorama que creo que en esa época no era tan común como opuesto al ballet tan rígido. ¿Qué nos puedes compartir de tu experiencia como miembro del Grand Ballet Canadien y ¿cuál otro?
Le Ballet Jazz en
El
Montréal.
Ballet Jazz de Montréal.
Both company, Grand Ballet Canadien and Ballet Jazz, were quite different. Grand Ballet Canadien is a huge ballet opera in Montreal, and it's more like a stationary company, so we didn't really go on tour. We were more performing in a season, so we had like 1 month or 2 months rehearsals and then 1 month performance, and that was most of the time. While Ballet Jazz de Montreal was a touring company, so we had 300 shows a year, and we usually had one performance which we were performing the whole year. So that was more like, with the Grand Ballet Canadien, I think I was very lucky because I had the opportunity to work with the big choreographers like Yuji Kirian or Forsyth or Matzek. They all came and worked with us, with the dancers. And Grand Ballet Canadien was also, what I liked about this company is because we had like a classical repertoire, which was the Nutcracker, which we did once a year for 2 months, very religiously. So we always knew as a dancers that from November to January we put point shoes, and we were very classical. And the rest of the year sometimes we went to completely contemporary work. So it was very challenging to go from like a high point shoes, very classical, then to go into like a Grand-Prix and socks. And Grand Ballet Canadien for me was, I think, my biggest career in my life, because I got big roles and I was performing big roles on big stages, so that was a lot of growing. And Ballet Jazz de Montreal, it was another challenge because it was a very young company, and we were fewer dancers, so we were only, I think, 12 dancers, so if somebody was injured, it was a problem. And we had to just perform all the time and travel, and we went to China, and then we did 20 shows, and then we went back to Canada. We had jet lag of 28 hours, and we performed the next day. So it was a lot of adrenaline, but definitely a completely different challenge. Yeah.
So the first one was Grand Ballet.
Grand Ballet Canadien.
En el Grand Ballet Canadien era muy opuesto al Jazz Ballet, en tanto que el Grand Ballet era una compañía de repertorio estable y el Jazz Ballet viajaba mucho. Era una compañía que hacía muchos tours. En el Grand Ballet sabíamos que íbamos a tener siempre el cascanueces de diciembre a enero, y luego el resto del año podía ser que nos fuéramos a algo completamente contemporáneo, lo opuesto. Entonces el gran reto era era esos cambios, adaptarse a ellos. También fue la compañía que para mí fue como lo que más me dio en mi carrera profesional, porque me dieron grandes roles, papeles importantes, y al mismo tiempo que tuvimos contacto con coreógrafos muy conocidos como Max Eck, William Forsythe y which one was the first one? Judy Killian. Y en el jazz ballet, pues lo que hacíamos era una sola obra todo el año, y se viajaba, por ejemplo, a China a hacer 20 funciones, luego hacíamos otras muchas en otro lado, después de 28 horas de jet lag, y había que bailar luego. Entonces fue mucha adrenalina, pero era completamente otro estilo. Que te describes como una nómada acérrima, y la pregunta es ¿cómo ha influenciado o ha formado tu danza esta manera de vivir?
So I think it comes down to a feeling of not having a culture. I feel I have simulated a European culture, Canadian culture, and then I lived in Germany, I lived in Switzerland, I lived in France, so all that mixture, and also because of Maurice Béjart and then another school I was in Munich, I touched so many different styles that, and I've traveled so much in my life that I don't have this need to how to say to identify myself with one country. And in some ways it's an enriching experience because I have such a big spectrum, but sometimes it feels also ungrounding. Sometimes I feel a little bit like, where is my roots? Where do I take from the ground? But at the same time, I think the freedom of being nomad is that I don't like to identify myself. Therefore, I try not to have concrete ideas about styles or dancers, or I like to really adapt myself to where I am. And I think that's a more human approach.
Para mí significa no estar identificada con ninguna cultura. Conozco de todas, habiendo viajado muchísimo, y conozco la europea en muchas facetas, China, ¿cómo se dice? Suiza, Alemania, Francia, varias más, pero luego por otros lados del Canadá, pero trato de no identificarme con ninguna. Por un lado eso me da mucha libertad, pero por otro lado a veces no siento arraigo en ningún lado. Como coreógrafa, ¿prefieres qué lenguaje prefieres? ¿Contar una historia o la abstracción?
I used to be very much attached to say a story, and I realized that it's like an obsession, and I try to go against it. So I try not to say a story, but convey more of a feeling. But I found myself still telling too much story.
Mi tendencia natural es querer contar una historia, y por eso trato de hacer algo que vaya en contra, que lo frene un poco, pero creo que todavía cuento demasiado historias.
What kind of dancers do you need for your choreographies?
¿Qué tipo de bailarines necesitas para tus coreografías?
Somebody who is open-minded, and I would say versatile. Somebody who is who is educated in the classical dance, but who also has a lot of base in contemporary. And sometimes I prefer to work with dancers who don't have any classical knowledge, because for me it's easier to then liberate myself from my own education.
Me gustan bailarines que tengan una mente abierta y que sean como de amplio espectro, es decir, que se hayan formado en clásico, pero también tengan conocimientos de otras técnicas más contemporáneas o modernas, aunque a veces me gusta trabajar con gente que no tiene nada de clásico, del ballet, para que me aleje de mis propia formación y de mis propias tendencias. Dime de la obra que estás creando para Nemian.
So the piece is called Returning, and for me it kind of represents my relationship to Mexico, because for me Mexico has become a very spiritual shift in my life, when I feel like I became way more attuned to my heart and to my spirituality. And so in this piece for Nemian, I really wanted to capture something which became very important for me, which is a prayer, and the importance of the thoughts and the intention and the intention we put out into the world. So for me it's a bit like a dancing prayer. There is no story, but there is for me there is the meaning of the piece, which is to let go of all the stories we hold on to and all the life luggages, because I found that in the end that's something which liberates us, to let go and kind of come back home to the heart. So that's the message of this piece.
Se llama esta obra Regresando porque mi experiencia en México me ha hecho hacer un giro espiritual en mi vida, y la pieza es como un rezo en el que se habla de soltar el pasado y todo lo que trae uno cargando, los prejuicios, y para regresar al corazón.
Okay.
¿Qué lenguaje corporal hay en esta pieza?
I would say in this piece I'm coming more from more classical approach. At the same time, what I really am looking for in this piece, it's a fluidity. So it's something which continues, and it's like a never-ending wave of movement.
En esta pieza pues tengo algo como una cierta cantidad de clásico, pero lo que me interesa es la continuidad de movimiento, como que no pare, que fluya.
In this work, do you still have a minimalistic approach to the scenography, props and light effects?
En esta obra también tienes un acercamiento minimalista a los atrezos, todo lo que está en el escenario.
Yeah, for sure. I still found that I'm trying to keep it simple.
Sí, me encontré que lo quiero mantener sencillo. ¿Qué proyectos tienes en puerta?
So my biggest one is I received a subvention from Canada Art Council, which is for me huge, because I applied so many times in my life and I never got a grant. So I finally got money from the government to create a new piece, which is called Inner Land Minds, and it's going to be a work with voice and body, and it's only research. So I'm going this summer back to Canada, and I will be with the dancers for 1 month in a residency to just research completely new language. And I've been also invited to dance in a festival in Montreal, which is called the Festival Quartier de Danse, which is like the festival of the quarters of the town. And I've been participating in this festival for at least 8 years now, so I'm looking forward to go back, and I have like a evening piece to present, so that's in September as well.
Por fin, después de muchas veces de haber aplicado a pedir becas o apoyos del estado de Canadá, me ha tocado un apoyo grande que significa mucho para mí, por ese mismo motivo, y es para hacer un trabajo de investigación nada más, y va a llevar voz aparte del movimiento corporal.
I'm going back to the piece of Nemian because you told me that it's a dance prayer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of music are you using?
Regreso al punto de Nemian, que es, bueno, se me olvidó en el anterior decir que está también invitada al Quartier de la Danse, que son como, un poco como bailar en tu barrio, y bueno, ese es otro proyecto para finales de este año, noviembre por ahí. Y regresando ahora a Nemian, dices que es un rezo bailado o en movimiento. ¿Me puedes explicar más la música?
Mm-hmm. So the music composer is Stone. And his music is very spiritual, and when you listen very close to all his lyrics and all his music, and he also likes to add Jewish music, like Jewish language as well as Russian. All the lyrics are sort of, like mindful awareness, spiritual lyrics.
La música es de Stone, que llevan ahí al final, y él tiene música como muy espiritual, en la que a veces, bueno, el texto es muy importante y a veces mete otros idiomas como el alemán o el hebreo, judío. Sí, y bueno, es muy tranquila su música, una onda muy espiritual. Y sobre todo si se escucha con cuidado los textos.
So I'm very happy to be here. For me, I really enjoy working with Nemian because they're very heart-open people. And I think, what was the end of the question?
In relation to the 30 years.
Right. And I'm excited. I'm super excited that I'm part of such a big anniversary. So I feel very honored in some ways to be choreographing piece for them, and that this piece also is gonna, I hope, keep going and keep being alive with Nemian. So for me, it's been a wonderful experience, and it's actually really closure also somehow with Mexico. So in a way, it feels like a gift to close this chapter.
Para mí ha sido muy agradable porque pues, son bailarines como muy abiertos del corazón, y por otro lado es como trabajar con ellos para estos 30 años es como también para mí cerrar un capítulo, mi capítulo en México.
By what?
Why do you have a constant activity?
Why do I have a constant activity?
La pregunta es, bueno, también sé que haces trabajo de modelaje, ¿Cómo es que tienes una actividad todo el tiempo? Hacen fotografía y no sé si también cine, pero en todo caso foto.
So I think this is a mistake of my parents because my father is a film director and my mom is a pianist. So I come from a very artsy family, and they always pushed me to be open to any form of arts and multitasked me with different, they sent me to different courses, and I think what I love about photography is the visual aspect of it, and for me that also in choreography plays a role, because for me choreography is also very visual art. So that's why I'm drawn to it, and yeah, that's probably it.
Creo que esto fue un error de mis papás, porque mi papá está en cine y mi mamá era pianista, pianista, y bueno, siempre me empujaron hacia las artes y hacia también la multiplicidad de expresiones, de manera que también lo visual me parece muy importante para la danza.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Okay.